The federal government's decision to extend the Northern Territory intervention has provoked furious debate. Critics say it's racist and violates Indigenous human rights, and 43,000 Australians have signed a petition calling for it to end. But in the remote APY lands of South Australia, female Indigenous leaders are calling for a new intervention. They say enforced income management is the only way to address the desperate poverty gripping their community. Jeff Waters travelled there to file this report.
This is the edge of the Great Victoria Desert in South Australia's remote northwest. Scattered across this region are the communities of the Arnungu, the People, Pitjantjatjara and Yankunytjatjara. That's why it's called the APY lands. More isolated than most, these Indigenous communities have a strong sense of their own language and culture, but the senior women are worried.
We need help. This place it's not the kids are skinny, but the community is skinny. With nothing, it's empty.
How did it come to this? Why would the senior women want such radical intervention? They say because of shocking and chronic poverty and resulting violence, abuse and neglect. A recent study said 3/4 of adults here survive on less than $300 a week. Many children experience hunger on a regular basis. The crisis has been so acute that the Red Cross recently delivered food relief to one of the communities here.
It's like being in some terrible African situation where you see orphans wandering along the street, AIDS orphans running along the street, eating garbage off the streets. There are some communities that have that phenomenon on a smaller scale. And you have to see it with your own eyes.
No alcohol is sold here, but sly grog and illegal drugs are smuggled in. Along with gambling, they worsen the financial situation for families. Determined to tackle the crisis, the powerful local women's council here is asking governments for a form of income management. They want half of the income of families in distress to be quarantined, isolated for expenditure only on essentials.
We've seen a lot of times when the mothers were going into office and changing the cheque and buying a little bit food and little bit clothing and wasting a lot of money and other things.
As well as dealing with low income, these communities struggle with a high cost of living. There's plenty of wholesome fresh food in each community's store. It's just that it's so very expensive. A food price survey conducted last year found items were often 50% higher than the city. We found beans, for example, at just under $20 a kilo.
If we have income management, then men who drink, men who gamble, men who buy drugs can't take our money and waste the money on drugs, alcohol and gambling. If we have control of our money, we can put food on the table for our children and for ourselves.
The federal minister says she's listening, though is yet to decide.
Parents are worried about making sure that their money is being spent on the needs of their children and not being spent on alcohol and drugs. And the message coming back to me is that it would be helpful if they could have income management.
The Women's Council wants a system even stricter than the Social Security income quarantining that happens now in the Northern Territory. It wants community elders to collectively decide which families are in distress and in need of financial restraint.
There is no human rights breach. In fact, you can argue that if they are purported to have rights of self-determination, according to the Declaration on the Rights of Indigenous People, and they say that they want voluntary income management, then they are exercising their rights of self-determination.
Jeff Waters reporting.